Hi, in today's video we'll go back and review the last 8 months of training, talk about what went well, what didn't go so well, and what I've learnt from each phase. The initial plan was to do a 50-kilometre trail ultramarathon, the Surf Coast Century, in October, but then COVID hit, we went into lockdown and pretty much all races were cancelled. So I wasn't really sure what I was doing. After a few weeks off, I decided to start a base training phase anyway and just see where that led to. So the base training phase consisted just of easy runs. There was no track workouts, no threshold intervals, no hill repeats. Everything was just an easy run to allow me to back up day after day running. The main focus of this base training phase for me was to try and get the biggest weekly run mileage I could. Previously, my biggest week was 70 kilometers of running, so I wanted to beat that. Base training lasted for just over 100 days. I succeeded in getting my biggest weekly run mileage of 80 kilometers, 10 kilometers longer than my previous best. I'll put the run mileage for each week during the base training phase on the screen. You can see that every third week was a recovery week. So even though I was only doing easy runs, I still needed to back off the mileage every fourth week just to get that extra recovery. So what went well with base training? Well, firstly, I hit my biggest ever weekly run mileage. I didn't get injured, and I stopped the phase when I felt that I'd hit the point that it would be difficult to move further from. What didn't go so well? One, when I just do easy running, I find that my run form gets a bit sloppy. The second problem was becoming too focused on chasing the mileage. I was pushing out all my runs, just trying to eke out mileage everywhere. So what did I learn from the base training? I think first, if it's going to be a large base training phase, I need to factor in some runs where we concentrate on running form. Second lesson is don't ruin sessions chasing mileage, specifically the recovery runs. And finally, something to experiment with, maybe try and push the long run a bit further, or even look for double runs to try and get that extra mileage rather than try and spread it across every session. But in general, I think the base training went pretty well. The next phase was early quality. This was 2 blocks of 3 weeks on, followed by 1 recovery week. Early quality was all about reintroducing speed into the legs. We did this with fast but short intervals with lots of recovery. The number of intervals were quite low and just gradually increased. I've listed the sessions on the screen, but these were mostly track workouts or threshold intervals. So we started off quite easy and just gradually build. The key in early quality is patience. Things that went well during early quality. I found my speed came back quite well. Each session, my interval times were more consistent, my pacing was better, and I was finding it easier to hit that rhythm. What didn't go well in the early quality phase? Well, one thing really, we went back into lockdown because of the second wave of COVID. Firstly, this resulted in me losing a bit of motivation, and I was still running every day, but there wasn't a lot of quality for a week or two. But the main issue is they restricted exercise to 1 hour per day, which completely ruled out the long run. So what did I learn from the early quality phase? In general, I think the phase went extremely well. The only real issue was the COVID lockdown, and that was completely out of my control. I've been calling the next phase true quality. This is where the sessions get harder. The intervals get longer, there's more intervals and less recovery. We also add more strength training like hill repeats. This is the real meat of the program. So the phases before that is preparing you for this phase. True quality phase was made up of 2 blocks, each block consisting of 3 weeks on, followed by a recovery week. When we look at what went well, the first block. Every session in that first block I was nailing. I was probably doing some of these sessions better than I've ever done before. Which leads me into what didn't go so well, which was the second block. The general stiffness had been building up over time. This started affecting sessions and I was no longer running well. If I had to narrow it down to one session, I would say it was the big hill repeats I did on Oliver's Hill. All my sessions before that, I was just nailing. Every session after that, I was struggling. But I think the real issue was the lack of massages. Usually I get one massage per month, but with COVID, all the myotherapist weren't allowed to work. So I was limited just to the foam roll, the spiky ball, stretching, and there was one strength and conditioning class via Zoom I was doing every week. But for me, at my age, nothing really replaces the massage. So if I had my time again, I'd probably do 1 or 2 less repeats on that hill repeat session, but I think it was really just a matter of time before the stiffness took hold. So my learnings from True Quality, obviously number 1, the importance of that regular massage. Secondly, don't get carried away with how good you're going. I got overconfident and went a little bit too hard on those hill repeats. Previously, because of the 5K COVID restriction, I'd been doing different hill repeats on a much less steep gradient. So I underestimated the impact of going from easy hills to a particularly hard hill. Finally, what are the lessons I learned from the overall program? Firstly, I really notice a difference when I'm not riding or swimming. In triathlon training, I'm doing about 10 to 12 hours a week. When I'm just running, it's only 5 to 6 hours a week. Even though I'm doing more running, I'm actually losing fitness and losing some of that endurance base. Cross training doesn't make you run better, but it definitely helps your fitness levels, and that in turn helps your endurance. Secondly, I've always known the importance of the long run, but it really highlighted it when I couldn't do that long run for 2 months because of the COVID restrictions. And even when those restrictions were lifted, it still didn't get back to the 2 hours because I had to start again from 60 minutes and slowly build up. The long run really is the backbone of endurance running, and without that you're just not going to achieve the same potential. Thirdly, I think I was a little too ambitious and made the program a bit long. I think we all look at stuff and say, oh yeah, I can do that, and then halfway through it's a bit of a different story. So it's not just being able to physically maintain the program, it's mental as well. And finally, I think the biggest benefit I found out of the whole program was running every day. Just the motivation aspect on that, not to break that running streak. Some of the best sessions I had were on days I didn't feel like running. I hope you found the video interesting. If you enjoyed it, please hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. See ya.